Hello. All right. So today we're going to be going over why Catholics should care about the loss of religious sisters. And so this may seem like it kind of comes out of nowhere from what I've been doing, but it's actually one of the first videos I referenced that I would do. And so it's actually a long time coming. When I talked about the initial video on the priest crisis, I promised this video because this video matters. Religious sisters are very important. And so we're in a state right now where we not only have a priest crisis, but we also have a religious sisters crisis. And I'll get into exactly how bad it is. Let me just, oops. Yeah, let's just have to move it over here. So let's see, here we go. So what we have here is the data from, let's see, Cara. So I've used data from here a lot. It's very reliable for what we're looking at, the number of religious sisters in America and worldwide. And so now we're gonna go over the numbers, but we're gonna go over it from, again, a reliable source. So this is the most updated number Excel sheet that we have. It came out earlier this year. So it's going to be a little different from what I had for the priest crisis, simply because the numbers are up to date. Like 2023, previously it had 2022 here. Now it has the pandemic, and then it's also got 2023 afterwards. So that's what we're going to work with. All right, so we're looking here. Line number 8. As you can see, in 1965, we have 178,000, almost 179,000 religious sisters to today, which is about 35,000, almost 36,000. And so the decline has been, we have about 1/5 of the amount of religious sisters that we have now, or I'm sorry, we have 1/5 of what we had in 1965. And so, it would look like this. Here's just a very basic graph. We seem to have 3 technical inflection points, one here in 1970, one here in 1975, and then one here in 2020. And so inflection points they can be a number of things in terms of graph. I'm using it in the sense of when the slopes changed. And so there are 3 times where the slope changes significantly, and that you can see it with the eye. And so we have that. Oops. What happened? Oh no. Okay, that was kind of weird. But no, we got it. So that's what we have right now. Let's see. Okay. I did break it. So now the question comes, looking at this data. I know a lot of you are thinking about it. Okay. I know a lot. 1965, 180,000 approximately. And now today it's, significantly less. Did Vatican II do this? That is a mixed bag. Because there are certain things that Vatican II promoted to keep keep religious sisters in there. But then there's a whole bunch of stuff about not actually promoting certain parameters that were established. And I'm not going to do it justice by giving you a summary here. Okay. I am not that type. I'm not going to be able to give you a historically accurate description of this in a way that I feel comfortable doing, only because you're talking about a lot of things. You're talking about the bishops of the council. You're talking about the religious orders, and then you're also talking about the hierarchy itself in terms of management and those that were in positions of power. So if you're interested in reviewing this, please go to, and just for a summary, go to Catholic Answers. Where have all the sisters gone? And I think Russell Shaw does a very good job of giving the appropriate nuance, showing that it's not like, I mean, it doesn't seem to be Vatican II. Like that doesn't seem to be the case. The numbers of sisters leaving the religious orders started, like, the dip happened prior in a significant way. So now I know some people would be like, well, similar things to the priesthood. The priesthood, it's a different bag, because as you read this, you'll see not quite the same things happened. And that's what makes it muddy. So please read this. I think you'll get a really good perspective on it. There are, of course, books out there, and I think Russell cites them. So if you want to really deep dive into this, please go into that, because it is a very convoluted aspect of what happened from 1965 to today. Okay, so that is actually part of the problem. One of the things that seemed to happen was that the religious orders, the nuns, the sisters, the mothers, like, established norms that went against the vows of people who, like, of religious sisters who committed. And so, like, the religious order went, let's just say, super liberal for the sake of simplicity. And you had very conservative religious sisters that were like, yeah, I'm not going to keep doing this because this goes against my vows. And they asked for permission, and they were given it to leave their order. So again, this is a very mixed bag. Like we have religious sisters leaving the sisterhood that are conservative, and they do it for, I think, what a lot of people would agree to be the right reasons. Some of them, I think, started their own religious order, but again, please look into this. I do not know the historical aspect for this one. It's a lot less straightforward, and so because you're not talking about, like, the sacraments directly, you're not talking about what do you call it? You're not talking about the sacraments directly. You're not talking about necessarily devotions directly, except for what happened within the devotions within the religious orders, right? So, yeah, when you set yourself apart from society, you should look like it. Yeah, like, you definitely shouldn't, like, attire seems to be one of those things that a lot of people agree on when it comes to, well, I say a lot of people agree on. I should say a lot of people agree on growing up. So people my age and younger, where, yeah, like, priests and religious sisters should dress the part, right? That's very important, because I'm like, it speaks to your vocation, and that's, again, like, that again, that is addressed in here. So please go there if you have any questions. Or if you want to go more into it. So what's very interesting though is, I'll add, this is going to be a little confusing, but I'll sort the data out. I'll add the other religious sisters. So we have two different religious sisters. We have one for the world on the top here, and then we have one for America. And so I just put it as, the world is like brownish color, and then America's blue. So, but you can see that the number isn't, like, it's kind of deceptive how this scales, because this is like basically 1 million to 600,000. So they've lost about 40%. Whereas, like, here it's about 180,000 to 35,000. So we've lost like 80%. And so there's like, the way the graph is, it kind of doesn't make it look that deceptive, but you can see the numbers. But anyways, the problem here seems to be that in our American country, right? Like when it comes to, well, I'll just go back to this because I probably shouldn't have done that, but whatever. When it comes to the America, there seems to be a real issue with exposure, right? Like part of the problem with priests and bishops not, or priests and religious sisters not looking the part when they go outside is that they don't let me address that point right now because you're not the only one. Would have expected the slope for the, yeah, because what I ended up doing is I screwed up I just realized this. I screwed up the time frame because this is 1970 to 2022. So it's not as long. It's slightly shorter. But yeah, it's graphically, because the numbers are so much bigger, it looks like the world has lost more overall, like 400,000. But in America, we've lost like 140,000, right? So like the what's screwing up the visual is that it's we're looking at totals and we're not looking at percentages, and so that's what's screwing it up. And the scaling of what's on the computer. So sometimes that screws it up, whatever. So like that's a visual problem I have to deal with like professionally sometimes too. But where things kind of look a little bit deceptive, but it's a scaling issue. But going back to this, like part of the reasons why like this number is so low is because of the exposure. We don't see religious sisters out there anymore. We don't know who to ask. We don't know who to follow. We don't know to like girls and boys do not see, like when you go to Target or something, Meijer, I live in Michigan, so Meijer is like a competitor of Walmart. When you go into Meijer, and you don't see religious sisters, you just see a religious sister looking like everyone else. Like that's a problem, right? Like because you're not exposed to it. That that religious sister is just quite literally acting like everyone else. And I think inherently like that poses a type, or not a type problem, but a problem of like I don't, it's an issue because you're not bringing about conviction or a reminder, and you've given your life over to God in a particular way, and it doesn't like your attire should reflect that, because your attire is an expression. And so now we have a generation, like right now, like my daughters, they see religious sisters. Religious sisters come to our parish. They're not like attached to the parish outright. Like they come on a weekend that they can, and they wear the habit, but they don't necessarily, what do you call it? Like they're not like Saint Basil's, an order of Saint Basil. We've also seen, like, again, I live in Michigan. I'm in the Archdiocese of Detroit. We have Chaldeans, which is an Eastern Rite. We have a Chaldean religious order for religious sisters that I've seen in Target. You just see a bunch of women with habits. And it's like, oh my gosh, I want to go talk to you. And that's exactly what I do, because I am that kind of guy. I took my daughters and I was like, oh my gosh, what order are you a part of? And they start, explaining like the order they're a part of. And it was a really great engagement for my kids, because my daughters were able to see religious sisters quite literally living as religious sisters and knowing, oh, well, they go to Target too. They go and do this. They're not just stuck in a monastery all day. I mean, not every not all religious sisters are nuns, right? But like there's this understanding of like the other in a very like weird way where it's like it's respected, it's a respected other, but it's like they're over there and they're outside of society. It's like, no, like you see them right here, they're in society, they're buying toilet paper, they're buying, you know what I mean, like they're normal people. And it there seems to be a case when it comes to explaining or at least practically showing these vocations. There's almost a type of idolization that happens where we don't like we do treat it like a respected other, but we treat it in a way where it's like it's higher. Like, right? Like where, oh, they're separated, we won't try to find them, we won't try to see them, we won't try to engage with them. They're just there. And we know that they're somewhere and they're praying for us. Um, Now it's not idolization outright, but it's this kind of like you're holding them to a higher esteem, but like then never engaging with them. It's kind of I'm not explaining this well, but it's like how in those really big churches, those even Catholic churches, you have the priest, and nobody knows the priest, or very few people do, and everyone else just kind of goes, "Oh, he's the priest. He's over there. He gives us the sacrament. He'll occasionally like give us a high five or something as we're leaving, but he's over there. He is safely tucked away from me, engaging in my personal life. He's only there on a Sunday." And so you create this problem with vocations where, like, I know I'm talking, this is religious sisters, but this deals with all vocations when it comes to uh them being religious in nature. Like we put them over there, like we don't engage with them. Like I have my priest, like my spiritual father, my priest, my pastor, he comes over about once a month, like to my house. My kids know him very well. In fact, most of them, all of them actually know him, have known him longer coming over to our house than not. It is a normal part of life where they see, oh, well, he doesn't stop being human. He doesn't, like, yes, he's got consecrated hands. He's standing in the place of God during Mass. And he presents us with God during Mass. But he is a human being like me. He likes playing video games. Like he likes doing this and that. Like it's like we have debates about like toiletry situations. Like they're just funny, like normal things. And like maybe you don't know, maybe you do. Anyways, it's funny. It's people being people, and vocations are part of life. And I think we treat religious sisters in the same way we treat those priests, where they're just, oh, they're special, they're over there. Or we'll say hi to them, but we don't try to engage with them in a way where it's like that's a human being. And like we should treat them like a human being. Like I don't know, like it's like, oh well, they're more pious than me, and because they're more pious than me, I'm I'll just say hi. I won't. I don't. I hope this is coming across, because I'm not trying to just say like bombard a religious sister, right? Like that's not what I'm saying. And like I'm saying like treat them like they have a vocation. They're, especially those that wear an habit, they're advertising their vocation, that they have devoted themselves to God. I mean, like talk to them. like don't just like be like, oh well, they're over there. Um, especially if they're at your parish or they come and visit, like engage with them. Um, so okay, I don't know how to say your name. I know you, Hayes. I'm gonna assume that's Hayes from Australia, from the down under. I can't. Oh, I used to be able to do that. I'm sorry. I used to have a roommate in college, or as I think you guys say, uni, who used to be he was from Australia. So but yeah, I thanks for being here. It's nice to see you. Um, uh, hey, Zurista, nice to meet you. Thanks for joining me. So oh, you're both from Australia. That's cool. All right, so cool. All right, so there's more people from Australia than in America in my chat, and that's pretty nice. I appreciate that. I know it's like 9. What time is it over here? I'm sorry. What time is it over there? If I have to like wait because I don't know what the time difference is. Oh, 11:20. Nice. Or 12. Okay, so yeah, you guys are just an hour apart, but that's fine. Yeah, it's middle of the day. That's great. Oh, I look forward to the middle of the day tomorrow. So, okay, so cool. All right, thanks for answering that. But so like I didn't let's see. This will probably I don't have Australia's numbers, so since Australia. Um and our Aussie night. Yep. So I don't have Australian numbers, but I do have numbers for worldwide religious sisters. And so whoops. And so like from 1970 to here. So I don't know if that's the same over in Australia where there's just been like if it's been as significant because for us since 1965 we've lost like 80% of our religious sisters. And the world has lost on average about 40%. And this is saying from 1970. So not quite the same, but yeah, losing 40%. Um, but like, I guess like with what I'm saying with exposure, like vocations by and large, it is about exposure. Like there's a reason why the first thing, like one of the first things our daughters do is when they play with dolls when they're growing up. They want to be like mommy. They want to get married, right? Like why is that? Why don't they say I want to be a priest? Well, usually it's because their greatest exposure of of their vocation, of the vocation that they're thinking of, is being married because that's what they see. And even though we're adults, well, most of us hopefully are adults, or at least acting like it. Just because we're adults, it doesn't mean that we don't have like the same type of problems, right? Like if you're not exposed to something, even if it's on a very basic level where it's like someone tells you, hey, pray about this thing you've never actually done, like pray about being a priest, like even on that level, like it's effective, it works. And I'm not saying like you do that and you automatically become a priest. That's not how that works. But what it does is it gets you thinking about it, and it helps you discern with God. And even though a 4-year-old isn't doing that, um their exposure to you being a priest, or I'm sorry, you being married, is huge on them. That's going to impact them. And that's you, I mean, for better or for worse, right? Like there's a bunch of situations where it's better or worse. Um yeah, so like that's like one of the big things that's driving our family when it comes to talking with priests, with religious sisters. It's why Father Eric comes over about once a month, and has for like the last 7 years. And why whenever religious sisters are there, like we what is it, we don't tell our daughters, hey, go talk to that woman. Like that's the most ridiculous thing to do. um um but what I typically do is I typically go and I start asking them questions, like where they're from, which order they're from, what they specialize in, because they are wearing the habit. And to better help them with their vocations, I try to understand where they're coming from so that I can help them with maybe like donations or talking to people, so that like their charisms can be enacted better. And so that's why I do that. And usually when I do that, my daughters will come and they'll start asking just, 11-year-old, 8-year-old questions. So there have been cases where we've seen religious sisters and they just go, and they just ask a flurry of questions. And I think that's like ideal, but as long as they're not being, annoying or, overbearing to the religious sisters. Yeah. So, and I actually think that that's like, what is it? Ascension Presents. Matt Fradd did one with Pints of Aquinas, where so speaking of Australians, right? I don't know how you feel about Matt Fradd, but uh he's been very he's put out a lot of good stuff when it comes to religious sisters. Like he had a mother on there, and she was giving advice uh when it came to vocations. And so that is absolutely needed now because these numbers are pretty bad. They're pretty low. And, we've talked about this before where we've seen numbers in other areas, in other vocations. And I've brought up the point of like, a priest looking like a religious CEO. And so when you see the Orthodox and liberal comparisons between priests and their tendencies, you'll see that there's less liberals and there's more Orthodox, which generally speaking is good. But there's also like external factors like that come into play, right? Like, okay, well, instead of being a priest, maybe he goes and works for a nonprofit. Maybe he becomes part of a political party activist group, right? Like there are other things that can draw him that are similar to it. And if the discernment is not there, but the inclination is like to act in a particular way, um then that can draw like it kind of pulls them out. Maybe being a social worker or a psychologist, right? Instead of being someone who has a very similar role, right? Like confession has an aspect of psychology in it. uh there's going to be like competition for the job, right? Like they may look at it as a job as opposed to a vocation. And that's I would argue that's probably like the biggest thing right now, because we just have such a terrible, at least in America, catechesis for discerning your vocation. It's like assumed that most people are just going to get married, and the willingness to do effective programs to help with vocations is very lacking. Like there's a lot of programs that are very superficial in what happens, but again, like exposure, like if those priest surveys I revealed, um or I showed in the what is it, the ordination altar boy video, um if that's any indication, what it's showing is exposure is a huge deal from there. The unfortunate thing is we don't have a religious sister component to that. And the religious orders necessarily have certain conditions that have to be met. And so there's an added level of discernment that has to happen on the side of the religious sister or the potential religious sister. So there's a lot of things at play. And I wanted to bring that up as part of this because I do think it's important when it comes to talking about how we see these numbers. Like this is not meant to be a black pill. Oh, thank you. I am making it. I am still working on the one that will be going to the bishops directly, but I want to make sure it looks really good and it's not in a casual format, right? Like I'm doing a lot of things in a casual format because it's less time consuming. For that one, I definitely want to like make it concise and good and professional. So but thank you very much, Zeresta. I appreciate that. So yeah, so like that's kind of like my angle with this is just, it's not a black pill. It's an opportunity for us to respond in a way that isn't, well, we're just going to pray, right? Like, you should pray about this. They're praying for you. Religious sisters are praying for you. You should pray for them, and you should pray for more people to have the grace of discernment, or have the graces for discernment to go into those vocations. This is not about a black pill, right? Like, some people will say this is a black pill video. No, bringing a problem to attention is not black pilling. It's an opportunity for us to respond with what God gave us, which is our minds, and to prayerfully work with Him. And so that's why I do these videos. It's not to just say, "Ha, statistics says you suck," or "we suck," or whatever. That's not the point. So, but that's all I've had to say for this in particular. If you guys have, I'll give it a minute if you guys have any questions. But I'm not looking to make this like an hour or whatever. I'm just looking to make this pretty concise. Whatever. So if yeah, I'm gonna give it a minute. If you guys don't have a question, I'm just gonna go ahead and go on to the end of the video, and that's it. Okay, all right. So that's people. Okay, so this is actually really important. Imagine you have two kids. Okay, imagine you have a boy and a girl. Imagine you also have you also want grandkids, which is most people. You want grandkids. Do you think, in the way society is working right now, there's an emphasis on the spiritual or just the material? Like, that's kind of like where that is, because that's the problem. If you have like five, like I've got 5 kids, and all of them I promote the priesthood, I promote getting married, I promote I promote all the vocations. I never say, "Hey, you have to do this," or "Hey, you have to pray for this in particular," because I am here to guide them. So this is I guess another thing. I'm here to guide them. I'm not here to say, "Hey, God is calling you to do this because I said so." Some people, especially on Twitter, absolutely say that. That's not okay, because you are not supposed to be the one that picks their vocation. God is calling them to the vocation. You're there to help them discern that vocation. So they absolutely should be praying about all of them. But like, unless like some indication has happened where they think God is calling them to a particular vocation, obviously support them in that way, but also leave open the fact that, it's their journey, right? Like, it's their discernment, not yours. So I'm a new convert as of Easter, and I've never heard once in church about vocations for women to the religious life. It is very sad. It is normally just a general vocations prayer. Right. And so like that's, and you know what, like, I kind of sympathize with bishops because they have a lot to deal with. I know in Australia as well in the United States, there's the abuse that has come out. That seems to be a worldwide issue. But all bishops are dealing with that. And oh yeah, so there's another. Yeah, so you guys are both like class of 2020 or 2024, converts of 2024. So yeah, that's great to hear. Yeah, first and foremost, yeah, that's great to hear, and I'm glad you converted and became part of the church. But just to stand in video, because we can totally go on a tangent about that. but there definitely seems to be a lot on the bishop's plate. And so I don't want to give the impression that the bishops suck, right? Like, I'm not going to just say, all right, my spiritual father sucks because he's not doing something the way I think he should be doing it. Like, there's a lot of things on his plate, and unfortunately, like, we don't see what that plate entails. And aside from very obviously problematic positions, there's unfortunately not a lot we can like judge prudentially, right? Like, judging actions, that is, not judging the bishop himself. But like the part about general vocation prayers, and like I said, there's a lot of superficial, that kind of goes into what I said earlier about like there's superficial indicators of, hey, like, we're generally talking about vocations, or we're generally praying about vocations. Isn't that great? Like, we're doing what we should be doing, we're praying, right? Like, but they're not actually moving to do anything, they're just praying about it. And that is, I think, like the worst. Like, it kind of, it's like virtue signaling, but better. Okay, you are praying. Praying is better than virtue signaling, right? Like, I'm not going to say that that's it's exactly like virtue signaling, because it's not. It has efficacious aspects to it, but it's like virtue signaling in where it stops at the virtue signaling, right? Like, people aren't actually going out and doing some of the things that they're virtue signaling. Whereas, like, if you're just praying about it and you're not acting in a way to move that prayer yourself, or you're not trying to cooperate with the Holy Spirit in that way, then that's an issue. Like, right now, not to pat myself on the back, I'm not trying to do that. But what I'm trying to do with the religious vocation issue is I'm bringing attention to it. I'm bringing attention to it so that people can act on it. So I am acting. So I have prayed about this, and I'm acting about it, or I'm acting in a way that my talents are best suited for, right? Like, I'm a statistician. I'm promoting the numbers on what they are. I'm promoting the state of where we are with this. And I'm promoting, again, not a black pill, but an opportunity for other people to take it upon themselves to do what I think are prudentially just common sense actions to help people familiarize themselves with religious vocations. And so that's like, this is quite literally an example of doing something. Now, I'm not going to like say, oh, well, the bishop needs to be doing that himself. Like, no, the bishop can't do everything, right? Like, us laity are also supposed to do stuff. And so, but like, I agree with you, like, especially when it comes to like the parish level, like people should be promoting priests. People should be promoting religious sisters, vocations, on par with marriage. Like, this is my experience. So I'm not trying to say like I'm the best or whatever. That's not what I'm saying. But like, but no, I'm not saying that. However, I see a lot of, like, right now we have a lot of altar boys. I think we have like 7 or 8. 3 years ago, I think we had 2. And to see that grow, like, literally brings hope for the future of the vocations, because maybe not all of them become priests. I mean, like, that's just statistically, that doesn't happen. Like, even though there's no like hard evidence for that, like, we know a bunch of people who used to be altar boys that are not priests, right? But like, they, seeing them, it brings hope that the vocations, like, one of them might, and that's very hopeful for us. Like, that's very good for us, because it's a natural progression from having 0 altar boys to 2 altar boys to now like 7 or 8. So I know that was a bit long-winded, but it's, I mean, like I totally get what you're talking about. Like it happens everywhere. Like where it just seems that we could be doing more. And especially since like priests are the ones that dispense most of the sacraments, like that is becoming a very real issue. Um where like we might have there might already exist this like priest deserts, like where there's just not a priest for a while. um I grew up in a parish that did not have a priest. We always had a visiting priest. And so like someone from India, Australia, Ireland, Africa, South America would come in. They're visiting the diocese, but they'd be asked to come to our parish to do mass on Sunday. And it was a permanent parish. It just didn't have a pastor, and so we would have that happen. Um, so I totally, yeah, I totally get this whole situation where like we're not at a good place right now. I gotta stop saying I don't know, whatever. It's just that's a thing of mine. So amen. God is always pulling at our hearts. Yeah. Um for a long time I didn't even realize nun sisters were still a thing until I saw one in the wild and have as okay, they're not animals. like, like they're not animals. It's not helping. Like, all right. But yeah, like at Michigan State, which is where I went to my undergrad, there was a woman, there was a religious sister that would walk on campus. And she was in a blue habit. And it was always like relieving to see her. Like I think I only talked to her like once, but I would always see her on my way to class, and I was typically like late to class. I was just a normal college student. And I'd see her, and it would always give me like a nice, like, well, like conviction about God, and how she in a particular way is working with God. Gotta stop saying them. Sorry. All right, so there's the yeah. I would be proud of all our kids following their vocations, married or not. If we end up with 50 grandkids or none because everyone was ordained or entered into the order of good, his will, not mine. Yep. And I think a lot, like, again, this goes back to like the grandparents situation. I never saw so is that because they like didn't dress? Because like, Cardinal Pell, for example, like, I unfortunately he passed. But like Cardinal Pell, I mean, he's like a very notable figure in America. Like if you were a practicing Catholic, you probably knew about Cardinal Pell, and you had a very favorable outlook on him. And then you like, especially around the whole thing with him being jailed for like a year, uh, with a false accusation. I don't know, like, is there just like not many priests in Australia? Like, I have no idea what the numbers are, and so like, I mean, that'd be kind of weird to do a video where it's just I literally go through like the amount of priests in Australia, the amount of priests in Europe, the amount of priests in Antarctica. Just throwing continents out there. Um, but like this idea of like that's crazy to me because like I was under the impression that Australia had at least a decent amount of priests. Um, yeah, based pal, the media brainwashed me as a child regarding his accusations. Like, I mean, wow, like I think a lot of people they his situation uh his situation seemed to be like described as like a kangaroo court. Like when like I'm glad the appeal like the appeal happened. But it seemed like there was a very real issue of adherence to your law there, where it was just not being taken into account. And that's actually that's something that's actually happening here, and it's happening here in a variety of ways that people do not like, and nor do they feel comfortable with. I live in Michigan. I live in probably one of the deepest blue parts of Michigan, which is to say they're mostly Democrat. And unfortunately in Michigan, we elect our judges, right? So the issue is we elect liberal politicians, but then we also elect our judges who interpret in the same vein as those politicians. And those politicians are doing things that are, going against the Constitution and a number of other things. But it ends up being where they have a very terrible application of the law. And usually, I don't want to say usually. I'm not throwing all of their, judgments under the bus. But you very often do hear appeals courts reversing their ruling. So that's whatever. But yeah, that's he for us in America, he was very much a great witness. Let's see. Okay, so all right, so I think this will be one of the last things. I remember St. John Paul II getting beatified and being like, they still do that. I have had people, so in this, they still do that understanding. I've had people be like, oh, you guys still believe in purgatory? And it's like, I was raised Catholic. I went to Catholic school, and it's like, okay, why are you asking this question? I don't understand. I do not understand. But now, I'm getting a little sour on Catholic schools. I'm getting sour, more and more sour, because there definitely does seem to be a systematic issue with what is conveyed in the church, or I'm sorry, what seems to be conveyed within Catholic schools. But that's something I'm going to need more evidence to build up, because that needs to be addressed. Because right now, and I know this is a huge tangent from what we're talking about, but it does help with vocations if they're teaching the right stuff, right? You would expect them to promote vocations, and you would expect Catholic schools to have a whole bunch of people going into the priesthood and religious orders, right? Because they're getting all of that education since they were in kindergarten, except that we don't see that happening at the level that most people would expect. But the issue, yeah, anyways, long story short, I'm going to have more evidence to come out with, I guess, more direct criticism. Right now, I'm just sour. I'm not quite to the point of being specifically this and this and this. And so, but we are in a place where there's kind of this confounding variable why so many Catholic schools are getting more students. And it's because what's being promoted in the public schools with the, LGBT stuff. And so because that happens, you have this confounding variable where they're well, I don't want my kids to learn this. I want them to go to Catholic school, but the Catholic school isn't at a level where it's promoting robust faith in a lot of places. So at a lot of Catholic schools. So I'm obviously qualifying that. I'm not throwing every Catholic school under the bus. I'm not even throwing most of them under the bus, but I am being very careful and lawyerly with what I'm saying, because I don't want to give the impression that Catholic schools, I don't want to speak falsehoods about it, because I don't have the evidence in front of me to present it. So, yeah. I had no keys. That's my excuse. So I've had this thought for a while, but considering the increase in population, is God still calling the same amount of percentage to the priesthood, religious life, or do you think God is withholding? So I'm going to throw out another option for you. Are the people who are being called by God too distracted to hear the whispers of God? And I would probably I would side with that, because I've thought about what you're talking about. I've thought about that, but and that's a great that's a great comment. Um, but just to throw it out there, I do think there is a level of, it's not God withholding so much as it is we're not facilitating like someone to be able to hear God in how they're supposed to. Like there are people who don't know how to pray and they go to Catholic schools. Like they just know, like they rattle off the Our Father or the Hail Mary, but they don't know how to pray, right? And so like if you don't know how to pray, like that's like step one. Like and so um um that uh I yeah, so that would be my point, just to throw that as an option. It could be all of them. I obviously we can't tell until we're on the other side of the veil, but but yeah, that's what I would say to that. Because yeah, I agree with you. We are so cooked. Oh, okay. So yeah, all right. So yes, okay. So I think that's it. It's 50 minutes. Okay, it's 50 minutes. All right. So I might make this into 2 videos. I might chop it up so people don't see like, oh, 50 minutes. But because I kind of whatever. I smaller videos like that are like 16 seem to do better. Because at the end of the day, I want people to see this. I don't want people to just be like, all right, I saw 5 minutes and left, because he's got 45 more minutes of something. So not to say this isn't good discussion. So but all right, so I'm gonna get going. It was nice to talk to you, Zarista, and oh my gosh, sorry, I'm scrolling up. Hayes, like it was nice talking to you. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your Saturday. We are about to go to sleep to then wake up in Saturday. So um thank you for joining me, and I hope this has been enlightening in terms of like the religious sister situation and what we can do about it and address it, especially when it comes to our families. Um, if you have a sister yourself, like obviously praying about vocations is important. So regardless of who you are, but promoting people to also pray about vocations is also important. So I think I'll end with that. So thank you very much for watching. Watching. Thank you very much for watching. My gosh, I'm tired. Okay, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and weekend. Bye.